All right. Welcome, guys. I am excited. I have another couple this week. I only thought it was going to be her, but then he popped on. I'm super duper excited about that because I love hearing both sides, and we don't get very many men on here. And so when we do, I will take every chance I can get to listen to their part of the story because I think it's just as vital as the mom because dad plays a huge part in it. So they obviously, I met them through social media. I had some people who I interviewed send them over my way. So I'm super duper excited. I've seen bits and pieces of their story. I don't know too much, but I am excited to hear everything and how they are involved in adoption. So I have Cydnee and Brayden with me, and I'm so excited for you guys to hear them speak. They will go ahead. I will turn the time over to them. And then if we have any questions, we'll go on from there. So guys, go ahead.
Perfect. Okay. Well, yeah, I'm Cydnee and this is my husband, Brayden, and we built our family through adoption, which we love.
Yeah.
So we're just going to tell you a little bit about it. We're really passionate about sharing our adoption journey and learning as much as we can about adoption from adoptees. So we're so grateful for this opportunity. So we've got 3 children. Our oldest daughter is named Ryan, and she's 7 and in first grade. Our second daughter's name is Hazel, and she's 6 in kindergarten. So they're exactly a year apart, born on the same day, which is real. I always feel like people are going to think we made that up, but it's not made up. It's true. And then our son is 2, and his name is Cal, and obviously not in school yet.
Yeah. Keep going. You're doing great.
So
Don't look at me. I'll chime in.
Yeah. Okay. Perfect. So when we first started our journey, basically what happened is we tried to get pregnant for a couple years, and
Well, I mean, we were married for 6 years and we didn't have a child. So we had tried. I mean, there were several years that we actually tried. The first couple years we were just like preventing, but then we stopped preventing, and then there were a couple years where we tried. So
yeah, and we never ended up getting pregnant, but we weren't ready to do any fertility treatments. That our heart wasn't pulled in that direction, and I decided to go to school. So we moved to Georgia. I went to PA school, and in my first year there, we got a phone call. At that time, my parents were living in Japan, in a place called Nagoya. And if you're a native Japanese speaker, I'm sorry, I didn't say that right, I'm sure. But they called, and they had a cute family that they knew. Their daughter, who was 16, was pregnant, and she was getting a lot of pressure to abort this baby from the boyfriend's parents. And so my parents were just kind of talking to her about options, and adoption came up. We had never tried to adopt at that point.
no. I definitely wasn't interested at that point. When she brought it up, I was like, I mean, sure, I'll think about it, but it wasn't anything that I had ever thought about or was even interested really at the time.
Yeah.
But I said yes.
So my parents called all of my siblings. So the family was like, you know what, we're maybe interested, this birth mom, we're maybe interested, but we don't want it to go to any family, but maybe we would be okay if this baby stayed in your family.
Yeah. So that's what the birth mom said.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so my parents, I believe, called all of my siblings, and I'm sure, like, I think probably all of them were like, yeah, we'd be interested. Adoption for me was just normal. I have cousins that are adopted, and they're my cousins. And it's just so normal and such a part of our family and our family culture. So, yeah, it was super normal. So I was like, yeah, of course we would. And my dad said, well, maybe you should talk to Brayden first.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
So I was like, oh yeah, I guess I should talk to him. And so we talked about it, and Brayden's like, oh, I've never thought about it before.
Yeah, I just assumed we'd have biological children, that we would go through the infertility route. We just assumed that was what I assumed that was what can happen. Sorry. I assumed that was our path and that was our plan. But we talked, and I was like, okay, sure. Like, yeah, let's do this. It feels right.
Yeah. And so then we heard back from the birth mom, and she said, actually, I changed my mind. I'm going to parent. And so we were like, okay, that's great, and we went on with our life. And then a year later, I was now in my second year and final year of my master's degree. We moved, oh no, we didn't move back yet. we got a call. I was here on a rotation. I was in Utah on a rotation, a surgery rotation. Oh, I think it might have been before that. Anyway, the point is they reached out again. The birth mom reached out again. And at this point, she's 17 and said, okay, I am pregnant again. And being a mom's really hard and I'm ready to place both. Would you be interested in taking two? And we were like, holy cow, we did not anticipate that. We were living in Georgia.
We were living in Georgia.
We were living in Georgia.
It took a year. So this is
Yeah.
2014.
Yes.
She had just finished she had just started. Yeah. Finished didactics, started rotations, clinicals.
Yeah. And so we were like, holy cow, there's no way we can do two. Like, we have no money. Brayden was working as a phlebotomist, which was awesome, but it's just not like
it's not a career.
Not a career. So we were like, how in the world are we going to fund this? There's no way this is going to work out for us. And we talked about splitting the babies for a little bit. Anyways, long story short, we felt really inspired and felt like we needed to move forward with the adoption of both girls. And so at that point, I came back to finish my rotations in Utah. We were so naive. We had no idea how long the process was going to take for us. But we were like all in. So when we started, one of the things we didn't realize was most people don't adopt from Japan. It's very uncommon for that to happen. And most adoptions that happen in Japan are adult adoptions, and they are done to secure an heir. And so, like, if a family had all daughters or something, a son would be adopted, that a daughter's spouse would be adopted in so that he would become the heir to the family fortune or whatever. But adopting children is not common. And so we didn't know, but the stipulations were crazy. Like, you had to go live there for
multiple years.
Yeah.
Not just like a few months. You had to have been living there for, I think at the time it was 3 years. You had to have been living there for 3 years in order to adopt out of Japan. That was from what I remember.
Yeah. And so we just didn't know. We were so naive. We were committed, which was worth something. But I came to do my rotations. Brayden was still working in Georgia. And I just started like calling agencies and trying to figure out who worked with Japan. And we found out that our birth mom, or our children's birth mom, she's half Brazilian, half Japanese, but she was born in Brazil. And so her citizenship was Brazilian, even though she was half Japanese and living in Japan, she didn't have Japanese citizenship. And so when her babies were born, Japan does not gift citizenship to babies born of foreign mothers. So her babies were Brazilian.
And they were only Brazilian because the birth fathers were not on the birth certificates. If the Japanese birth fathers had been on the birth certificate, they could have claimed Japanese citizenship, but the fathers were not on the birth certificate. So they were Brazilian citizens. That's how it worked out.
So it actually ended up being a huge tender mercy and kind of a loophole for us, because we didn't have to live there for that stint of time, because they were technically, even though they were in Japan, they were not Japanese citizens, technically.
Yeah. And one thing we kind of skipped over is that when Hazel was born, so there's Ryan and Hazel, they're sisters born same day, year apart. When Hazel was born, Cydnee went over there. Cydnee's like, okay, let's go do this.
No. What happened is so my parents at that point were now living here in America. And so their friends, we were trying to kind of touch base with the birth family. The time zones were like way off. So it was difficult to keep in touch. And so one of their really good friends drove down to where the birth mom was to see the baby and said, I think you need to come over and touch base with everybody and be here in person to get the things you need to done. There's just a lot that needs to be done, that the distance is going to be problematic. So again, we were naive, thinking that maybe we would be bringing these babies home. So we went over to Japan. I went with my mom and dad at that point. My dad speaks Japanese well. and I don't speak it at all. So we went over and that's when we first met Ryan in person and Hazel, and she was 2 weeks old.
Mhm. She's beautiful.
Yeah, they're both
Beautiful.
Yeah, they're both stinking cute.
Yeah. So what happened next?
So then,
You're looking at me. Like,
yeah.
you're telling it.
So then, when I was here, we started working with that agency. International adoption is a little bit tricky. If you are thinking of adopting, find a good agency and social workers that have experience adopting from the countries that you're hoping to adopt from, because the assistance that they can give you is so crucial. And that's one thing we didn't do up front. We were just, like I said, so naive. We thought the process was going to be quick and easy. We thought since the birth mom had kind of contacted us and reached out to us, we weren't going to need, like, we would just need legal. And that is not the case. Like, you legally have to have an agency for international adoptions now. And we didn't know that. Anyway, so it took us a long time. One of the reasons it took so long to get the girls here, that whole adoption process took a year. But one of the reasons is just because we were so naive up front. And then it's secondary. International adoption is just difficult. You have to deal with your agency here, the government here, and then you have USCIS that you have to comply with, which is United States Immigration and Citizenship Services, right?
Sounds right.
Services and Immigration Services. And there's lots of loopholes you have to jump through before you can bring babies home.
Well, yeah, and then you have to work with their government, the Japanese,
and an agency there too.
Agency there. So it was difficult, and it kind of, like she had said, I was a phlebotomist. She was in school. We were living off of loans. We didn't have the money. We received a tremendous amount of help. It wouldn't have been possible without help that we received. So
yeah. So by the time things just kept rolling along, and the process almost fell through probably like 3 or 4 times.
I would say like 6 or 7 times.
Really, it was just, it would just come to like this devastating halt. And, my heart would just like break every time.
It was like every Sunday in church, every time we started singing a song, she would just, it was the year of tears is what she calls it. She would just start crying. Yeah. And after probably like the 5th or 6th time that it was like, no, this adoption can't happen. There's no possible way. I remember having a conversation with her dad and being like, all right, Scott, like, feeling like this might not actually be possible. And he's like, I was meaning to talk with you and sit about it. At what point do we call it quits? We've tried, we've given our all, and
poured money.
We poured money and energy, effort, time, all of that. At what point do we call it quits? And I said, I don't know, let's talk with Sid. So we kind of cornered her.
They did.
And we said, like, at what point do we call it quits? Like, just genuinely asking her, like, letting her know that, like, we've been doing this for a long time. I don't know that this is possible. I'm okay to maybe throw the towel in. And Scott was kind of like, I think that's wise. And then she rebuked us. She just let us have it.
Yeah. I was like, honestly, I was the one doing the majority of the busy work, like getting paperwork, and the agency that we ended up having to work with was like an hour and a half from our house. So I had like driven up there to like drop things off over and over, like by myself, and while he was still in Georgia working or wherever.
Yeah, I moved back eventually.
Yeah, it took some time, but I was like, no, I have done all the work. And I will say when we're done, nobody else is going to tell me that those are my babies, and I will do anything I have to get them here. During that year, we really kept in contact with them, and we have a very good relationship with their birth family. We love them. They feel like extended family for us. So we were Skyping regularly with them, and
at least every week.
Yeah. And I knew that they were committed to this process too. And though it was difficult, we all felt that it was right. And we all wanted and still want, the best for them, for Ryan and Hazel. so we just kept pushing, and finally it worked. So after a year of a lot of hard work, the year of tears, like Brayden mentioned, we got to go over to Japan, and it was just Brayden and I, and got to meet. That was his first time meeting the girls in person.
Yeah. Cydnee had met them because she had gone over when Hazel was 2 weeks old. And so she had FaceTimed me and I'd seen pictures, but I had never met the girls. So
Yeah.
other than just like, I mean, in Zoom and Skype. And so we had Skyped a lot, but.
Yeah. But I remember we had like a designated meeting spot, and it was the hotel we were going to stay at that night. And I just remember being so nervous. Tell me.
Yeah.
So nervous, like could have thrown up nervous. Like we're meeting our kids in real life for the first time. And like, what if they don't even like us?
Yeah, we were naive. We thought these babies were just going to be ours, and life was going to be easy, and it was going to be bliss. And even after we got everything, like we got there, it still was hard. It took 2 weeks. We were in Japan for about 2 weeks, still getting paperwork done.
Mm-hmm.
We had to go to immigration offices there and get things done. And we were trying to adapt to life with kids. And we had help. The birth mother's aunt.
The birth mother's sister.
The birth mother's sister. So Ryan and Hazel's her aunt.
Yeah.
She helped. She came with us back to the United States actually for the first 3 months to help us like kind of adjust the transition period, because she was raising the children at the time as their aunt. She was raising them. So yeah, it was interesting. I mean, we had Hazel, the rooms were tiny. So we had Hazel in our room with us, and Ryan was in her room with her. And so it made it a little bit easier that we had that help. But by that time, Hazel was 1, or they were 1 month away from Hazel being 1 and Ryan being 2. So that whole year. Yeah, it was interesting.
Yeah. So that was, it was a year of tears, but it was also a year of like a million miracles. We saw so many miracles just to get us to the point that we could bring them home, and with their aunt, who we love and who's amazing. But yeah, it was beautiful. So that was kind of their story. Anything else you think we should add?
No, I think there's a lot of the story that we're leaving out on purpose because it's not our story to tell. Just so you guys are aware, it's Ryan and Hazel's story that they don't know or understand yet as well. But maybe someday when they're older, if they're wanting to share, they can share that part of the story. But I think that's pretty good for them.
Yeah, it's pretty good. But yeah, so we love their birth family. Like I mentioned, we do the best we can to keep in contact with them. They still live in Japan. And so we Facebook message, and we try to Skype, send lots of pictures, typical stuff. They'll usually touch base as best they can too. So they're awesome, and we are so grateful. And then after that, we were like, we'll never do this again.
Yeah. We swore we would never adopt. I was like, no,
two's good.
We're done. I was like, we're done. And if we're not done, we're going to try and do whatever else. Because like we had said, we never tried fertility. So I was like, yeah, we're going to go that route. We'll start Clomid, in vitro, whatever else. We'll go down to like just surrogate gestational carrier before we go back to adoption. But
yeah, it was, we always try to elevate the voices of adoptees and birth parents. And that's why we love meeting those people and hearing their stories and getting their perspectives and learning from them. And it's not our perspective. I feel like it was a little bit traumatic, honestly. Like it was rough.
So when we say traumatic, probably should be best to specify that having Ryan and Hazel as our kids was not traumatic.
No, that wasn't traumatic.
That is just the process of adoption.
Yeah.
That was traumatic. It was so emotional. On one day, off the next day, on and off, over and over again. But yeah, even when we adopted Ryan and Hazel, it was because they were 1 and 2. It was difficult to bond with them, and it took some time for us to like feel the love. Like it took probably 4 to 6 months until Ryan felt like I was her dad, and I felt like she was my daughter. Hazel was a little bit easier because she was 1, she was younger, and so there's more of an instant connection.
But
But
also Hazel loved him.
that's
Like
true.
she was so
She did.
shy and, you know, just a shy little kid, baby at that point, and she loved Brayden. She wanted him to hold her, and she wanted to
Yeah.
like smile at him.
And I think it was because their aunt was their mother figure at the time, and they didn't have a father figure. And so I think I filled that role very easily for her. For Ryan, I think it was a little more, she's a little more independent and strong-willed, so it took a little bit more time.
She is.
But yeah, anything else about their story?
No. Well, one thing I would share is we had so many cheerleaders along the way. So if you haven't adopted or you're not an adoptee and you don't have any like direct connection with adoption, but you maybe know somebody who does or who is trying, or like, your support means so much. And just the thoughtful checking up. Sometimes it made me cry when people would ask. They maybe regretted it. Like, how's it going? Like, it's fine. It's fine. I'm fine. But like, it was so nice to have people who supported us. And when we finally got to bring them home, we had like a shower.
A baby shower.
And it was so fun. So many people came to just like pop in and meet the girls. They were so invested in our journey, and
it was people that I didn't even know, like people that
our parents' neighbors,
parents' neighbors, or parents' friends, or coworkers of her brother, or someone just, they'd show up, and people were so generous and so kind to us and so good to us. I don't think we deserved any of it, but we are so grateful for it. And so, yeah, we had a little reception, and I was thinking like, oh, my family will come, her family will come, it'll be good. But no, I think there were more people that were not family that came than actual family.
Yeah, it felt like a celebration.
It was a celebration.
It was a reception.
There was like hundreds of people.
Yeah, and then we just, like, even if you don't know the people super well that are adopting or whatever, it means so much. And we just felt like our children had a village. So it was super meaningful for us.
Yeah, anything you can do for people that are adopting. People that are adopting are usually strained financially due to the costs. They're strained emotionally. They're strained all sorts of ways.
Yeah,
so
physically, it's just like
anything that you can do is really helpful. So yeah, just a 2-cent plug to help people.
Yeah. So yeah, good. And if you're trying, you got this. Hang in there.
Yeah, you got this.
So then, I don't know, years later, how many years was it?
4.5 years later.
Yeah, so we just went on with our life, doing our thing.
Well, it was 3 years later until.
So then I came home from church one day, and I was talking with another adopted mom who's in my ward, and we had just been talking at church. And I came home and I started to cry, and I was like, I think we're supposed to adopt again, Brayden.
I did that.
That's what he did.
I did that.
Oh, he was like, yeah, no.
I just laughed, and I was like, oh, that's funny. No, that's not.
We're not doing that.
No, that's not happening.
And I remember even going to I think we had like family dinner or something that day. And I remember like telling my family and whoever was there. And I just remember them being like, we're going to do that again? Like, what?
Well, I think even her dad was like, or her mom was like, oh, kind of thought maybe she was joking. And then she was like, oh, okay. All right, well, think about it. Because they all invested so much in that, in Ryan and Hazel getting them here. So yeah, she came home. That was probably like 3.5 years after.
Yeah, so I think that was like July. And then we just didn't do anything about it. We're like, well, we'll just kind of sit on it and see. And then in October, I had a cousin that reached out. She called me.
Yeah.
And I love this cousin. She's amazing and wonderful. And she doesn't typically call me. So I was like, huh. So I should also say she has 5 biological children and 2 adopted children. So their family is built by adoption as well. And so she called, and I answered, And I just said, hey, what's up? And she said, our birth mom, my children's birth mom, is pregnant and she's thinking she wants to place, and we're not ready to add to our family. They had 7 children and they had their littles were little.
Yeah.
And her 2 youngest are 6 weeks apart. And so she's like, we're not ready to do that, but I've really been praying and I want to be invested and involved. And I want this baby, who's my baby's sibling, to like go to somebody who we can continue to, forge relationships with. And are you interested? And I said, yeah, we are interested. And then I asked Brayden if we were interested.
I wasn't. So I wasn't interested for one main reason is that when we adopted Ryan and Hazel, we sunk everything we had as far as financials and all that kind of stuff. We had just gotten to a place where we could financially start building our life again. So we had bought this little townhome that we have, and we had created like goals. So what do we want to accomplish in a year, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years? And we had mapped out our goals financially and career-wise, all these different things. And so I was not ready at the time. I've been driving my spray painted Nissan Maxima for too many years. I was ready for a new one. By the way, I still have it. So it's been a long time. But yeah, so that's why I wasn't ready. But I talked with her and we talked, and there were some heated discussions, but ultimately she just kept saying, well, have you prayed about it yet? And I was like, no, I haven't prayed about it, because I didn't want an answer. I didn't want God to tell me like, this is right. So I kept pushing it off, but finally I prayed about it and it felt right. So
I will say, Brayden was like, if you think that this is what we're supposed to do, then let's go ahead and do it. I'm like, oh, no. That is not how it works. Like, you need to be like involved and committed to this process if this is what we're doing, because it's a long haul. And so that I wasn't going to move forward without him being fully invested. And that is advice I would give to any parent that is wanting
couple.
That if it's not right for both of you, it's probably not right for one of you. It's probably, a lot of things are like that in marriage, and children are certainly that, especially adoption. It's an investment of a lot of time, but the investment continues. We're a transracial family, which means that Brayden and I are both Caucasian, and none of our children are Caucasian. And so it's an ongoing education process for us of how do we embrace their heritage, and how do we embrace their culture, and how do we provide racial mirrors for them in their lives, and how do we celebrate holidays that are celebrated in their home countries. And so it is an ongoing investment, more than even a financial investment or the roller coaster part of adoption. We're talking about the long haul of life, right? And can we provide what they need long term? And if you can't do that together, that's something you should consider, thinking about before you move forward. So anyway, we decided, so we met with my cousin and her husband and got to talk with them about, okay, tell us about the birth family, and so many different things. Cal, our youngest child, is Marshallese, and beautiful culture. He's wonderful, but his story is interesting as well. It came with its own set of hiccups and difficulties. So we said, yes, we're invested. We started our home study again.
We weren't planning to adopt Cal at the time. So we were planning to adopt a
different baby.
Yeah, a different baby from a different birth mother. And so we were invested, and that's when we say, yes, we're investing, we're ready. That was the plan at the time, was a different birth mother, which ended up falling through.
Yeah. So we start the process, we do our home study, we connect with the birth mom, who is the birth mom of my cousin's children as well. Right. And so we've got this good dialogue, we've got good connection. There's a language barrier, but there's a translator involved as well. So we're moving forward, and that was wonderful. And then the father comes back into the picture, and they were kind of on off kind of a relationship. And so he was in and out of the picture, and he came back in the picture and wanted to parent. He didn't want to place. And so they told us that the agency let us know, hey,
And it was pretty early too. It was only like,
well, we started in October and probably in December, maybe.
yeah, middle of December is when we found this out, and she was due in February.
But they said, you know, if they're not together by the time this baby's born, we think the likelihood of her placing is still quite high. So we were kind of in limbo for a few months. Like, okay, is this baby, you know, and we never anticipate, like, our goal is never to break up a birth family, never ever. In an ideal world, we believe the birth parents are probably the best parents for any child, right? But we feel inspired to adopt because we feel that birth moms should have an option if they're not ready and they don't feel like they're in a place where they can be that best parent. And so we want to be there for those birth moms and those families. Anyways, she chose to parent in the end. And even though we knew that was probably the best case scenario for that baby, it was still just like heartbreaking. I don't know what a miscarriage feels like, but I feel like this would probably be close. Just because I had felt so strongly that she was mine, you know, and started picturing her in my family and in my life and siblings with my kids. And so to have that like disappear was really, really hard. So after that, they called and said, okay, you can either lose your money when you start the adoption process. You typically have scheduled payments, so you can lose what you've paid, at least in the greater portion.
Yeah, significant portion, yeah.
Or we can talk about rolling that over into a different adoption with our agency. And we have a family we think would be a good fit for you. And they said, it's a boy, because this other baby was a girl. And it's a boy, would you be interested in a boy? And I was like, oh. And Brayden was like,
yes. Like, I was in the background like, yes, we are. And she was like, oh, okay.
Yeah,
he
of
says
course.
yes.
Yeah, of course. I was like, oh yeah.
But we hadn't thought of it because we were planning on a girl. We had girls. We didn't even think about a boy, honestly.
Yeah, it
had never crossed my mind.
Yeah. So we said, can you give us a week? You know, we're kind of just like trying to pick up the pieces of our shattered heart. Can you give us a week? And she said, we'll give you 1 week. I think she said till Friday, which was not even a whole week.
No, it was like 5 days, 4 days.
We're trying to match this baby, and we've got people who are interested. So if you're not, we're moving on. And so we thought about it, and we're like, no, we feel good about this. Like, if it happens again, that's okay. Like, we're gonna move forward. So we did.
And they picked us, and they presented our name, and she picked us, and
she felt like we were a good match. And then we started, you know, being in contact with her, messaging her, and we talked quite regularly.
Yeah, you were. I was surprised. I have not been in these Facebook message chains, but yeah, it was daily. You were talking to them daily. Yeah, they were asking us questions. We were asking them questions, and it's still like almost daily that you communicate with her, right? Or
yeah. We communicate still almost daily. Cal's birth mom and I, which is awesome. So we went out. His parents are Marshallese, but they were here in the United States in Arizona, and that's where he was born. And so we flew out to Arizona, and she had a planned C-section, which was convenient. Mostly it was planned because he wasn't coming. So we went out there for that. I got to be in the room when he was born, which was awesome. And we got to stay in hospital as well. They gave us our own room, just a few rooms down, and were so sweet to us. And it was really nice to be able to spend that time. I remember, I don't always share this part, but because I think there will be adoptive parents or hopeful adoptive or recently about to adopt kind of parents that might watch. One of the tips I would give, I remember feeling so vulnerable here we are with this baby who I feel like is mine, but he's not mine yet. Like, birth mom has yet to relinquish. She's the mother, and she can decide at any point that she changes her mind. And I remember feeling like I just want to kind of like hoard him in my room, because I'm so worried if she spends time with him, she's going to change her mind. And I remember talking to the social worker, and I just was really open and said, I feel like this, and I remember she was like, this is a time, well, she validated my feelings first, but this is a time for that birth mom to spend, and she won't be there. Let her have this time, and let her have this kind of healing closure for this experience. And that was probably some of the best advice I think we got when we were there.
I had similar feelings to her. And at this point, because of the other adoption, even at this point, when we had Cal in our room with us, and he's been with us for a week or two, coming up on 2 weeks, she hasn't signed the papers to make it official. I was still emotionally unattached to this child, in a sense.
First 72 hours.
Oh, was it 3 days?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, so it's first 3 days. Yeah. So I was pretty emotionally attached, but I had similar feelings to her. But I do remember the social worker as well saying, like, I think it's important that you allow them to see how you will be interacting in the future, right? Like, we're going to be open. We want them to be a part of the family. So show them that now, help that validate that's true. What you're saying is true to them, by bringing Cal over. So we did. And it was, the birth mother was when Cal was born, she was like, I don't want to hold him. She was trying to cut herself off emotionally as well, I could tell. Mm-hmm. But yeah, we did. That was great advice.
And by the time she left, I feel like she had bonded with him, and we had all bonded. Like, yeah. It was a good thing for all of us. We got to see how much they loved him. And I think there's a misconception for a lot of just people in general that think birth moms placed because they didn't,
they
love
didn't
them,
want
or they
the child. Like, that's like, they didn't want them as kind of like, but no,
they love him. And it was cool for us to see in that moment, like, they did what they felt like was the best option for him, but they love him as much as we love him.
Yeah, we the birth father would sneak over to our room when the birth mother was taking a nap to come hold Cal. So it was, yeah. And we took him out dinner. But yeah, so adoption went well for Cal. We keep in touch with them, and then it's tradition in the Marshallese Islands that at 1 year old, so in the Marshall Islands, they don't name the child until they're 1 year old.
They used to not.
The tradition is they used to not name the child until they're 1 year old, because there was a high death rate before the age of 1. And so at 1, they have a big celebration, a big party, and they name the child. And so we took Cal to where they were living at the time, and we had this big party and this big celebration, and we all bonded all over again, and they got to meet, see Cal as a 1 year old, and it was really good.
Yeah, it was awesome.
So
they're both birth families were as open as we can be. We call them by their names. We call our birth mom and birth dad by their first name, but we'll often call them like biological mom or dad, or birth mom or dad, and like grandpa and grandma and aunt and uncle. Like, they're just all part of the family. And we hope that that's something that our kids feel. And
I think they do, because like Ryan and Hazel, or Ryan, yeah, they both will be like, we talk about our family and how we're different, and we've got different books that talk about adoption, and Ryan or Hazel, either one of them will be like, so tell us how you got us again. And so we're like, they've heard the story a million times, so we're like, how about you tell us? And so they'll be like, oh, well, our other mom carried us in her tummy, and then so they start explaining the story, and it's cute. Like, we love all families. Like, we tell our girls, it's not very many people have 3 grandmas or 3 grandpas, so that kind of stuff. So it's cute.
Yeah.
Anything else you want to add?
Adoption is awesome.
Adoption is awesome.
And we love it.
We do love it. And yeah, I think we're going to add one more to our family through adoption. So
yes, we're hoping to adopt. So we're just we're just doing our home study again, renewing our home study.
yeah.
So we're feeling all the feelings again.
Same process as with Cal. Cydnee's like, I think we need to adopt again. And I was like, oh, funny. I was like, no, because I'm finally getting that car we talked about and you promised I could get 5 years ago. But yeah, no, I'm not getting that car now. So
yeah.
But
maybe we need a new car because this will be baby number 4 and we don't have a car big enough. So.
We'll have to get a car. We'll have to turn in our cars to get a big car. But yeah, it's a roller coaster, but it's rewarding and it's a good thing. So we hope other adopting parents and adoptees feel the same way.
No, I think that's great. And the thing that I love about your guys' story, and then same with Lynette, and I totally think, but how close you guys are to the birth families, because there's so many adoptees that I've talked to. It's not that way till all of us, because we're all now like in our 30s and stuff. And so now we finally have found our families. I think just dynamics of it from when we were little, it's changed so much differently. And I love how you guys completely said, like 100% said, birth moms don't do it because they can't handle it or they don't want the baby or those kinds of things. Like, at least for mine, it was financial. And it's crazy as I have found out who my birth mom is. And I mean, I've shared this a couple times, but you guys probably haven't heard it. I'm smack dab in the middle of 7 kids. So I was the only one given up for adoption. So when I found my birth family, I was kind of like, what the heck? Why just me? And but at the same time, having faith in God that I have, everything works out for a reason. And my parents are my parents and my siblings are my siblings. Like, even though, it's just crazy how it works out. And I feel like a lot of adoptive families are going this way more, and I want it to be this way more, is to embed the culture into what it is, because that's something my parents were amazing with, like buying me colored dolls and different things like that. But I really, really, really would have, like, my husband is kind of ironic because now my husband travels to work for Columbia. Anyway, that's a whole different other story, because I'm from Columbia. And so like there's no, like, he's there all the time for work. But I really wish my parents would have, like, holidays and other things like that I could have known about. But I feel like there's always a freaking holiday in Columbia, because every single Monday when my husband's there, he's like, we're not at work. Always a holiday, but those kinds of things. And it's been so great to find my birth family. And so there's things like we're starting to try, like even my husband help incorporate with our kids, because they're half Colombian, half white. But that's one thing I've noticed too. It's just so crazy. And I love that nowadays they are taking that shift to make sure it's in those kids' lives and they know, and all those kinds of things. And it makes me laugh so hard that you're just like, nope, we're not adopting again. Nope. And then of course you just know, as hard as it is. And I'm with you, like, yeah, there's money, there's time, but the emotional toll I think that it takes on every single person involved, even the adoptees, because it's like you get older, and I love how open you guys are with your kids. There's a lot of questions that come with it, and just there to answer them, because and as an adoptee you don't want to hurt your parents, because you're like, well, I have these questions and you guys just seem so open and honest, and just no matter what, I just feel like your kids are going to be able to just go and talk to you, and you're gonna be like, yeah, this is how it is. And to have all those grandparents, like with Lynette, they have like 8 grandparents. Holy cow, birthday parties. I'm like, can I come be a grandkid? Yeah, all those grandparents. But it's like, I love it. And I learn something new every single time. And I'm learning that international adoption is a lot harder with papers, and it gets sticky and all that kind of crap, because you don't only have to deal with like the US laws, you have to deal with all the other laws, where when it's in the States, it's kind of like, okay, one and done per se. So I have mad respect, because I am an international adoption for people that international adopt, because I think it's so amazing. Yes, I know there's a lot of kids in the United States that need it, but I also think it's just so magical when parents can do that.
Well, and I think too, for us, it was like an interesting, I remember when Cal, one of the things that Brayden was worried about with Cal was like, I'm worried that if we adopt him, that means we're not going to ever try to have our own biological children, because at that point we never had.
Yeah, that was actually a stipulation. Actually, I had two stipulations if we were going to move forward with trying to adopt again after the one fell through. Is one, I still get to buy my car in the following August, which that I would backed out of that because it just didn't work out financially and I accepted it. But two is that we would try to have our own biological kids. I just felt like, I don't know, maybe like it's just religious in me or something, that like we didn't try and do our part to bring kids into this world, or spirits from, into this world. So I kind of felt that way, but
not that you felt that Ryan and Hazel weren't yours or aren't our own.
Right. But I just kind of felt like we weren't trying on our own. I kind of felt like we were copying out in some sort of weird sense. I don't know. But then as soon as we got Cal, he and I were we were like soul buddies, and wherever in the pre-existence world, we were soul buddies because we're like best buds now. Like, I think I was meant to be his dad. Like, we're just best buds. Our personalities and everything about him, we just get along so well.
And what did you say after that though?
Oh yeah. And then after that, I said, no, I don't need a bio. That's just not how we had kids to our family. But I also thought we were done after Cal too.
So I think it is interesting because sometimes I feel like there's also a stigma around adoption, that it's only something that you would do if you can't have your own children. I mean, we haven't tried to have children in
we have no idea
so long. Like, we really haven't at all. Like, we've prevented.
Yeah.
Because that's just not our path. Our heart is with adoption, and they are our kids. They're their birth mom's kids too. And we get to share that title. But that's just like our path to building our family. So I hope that people don't always reserve like possible adoption for only a possibility if they don't have their own biological children. It's a good way to build families just because.
Yeah. Well said. So.
No, and I think that's great because with my family, my 4 older siblings, they're biologically my parents, and then I'm the only one that's adopted. So.
Oh, really?
Yeah, theirs didn't happen that way either. So it's just totally different. My mom and dad both, it was kind of crazy. They just both like randomly came together and they're like, we need to adopt. And they're like, okay. And so it's just crazy how it works. And every single one of these stories is my favorite because I've interviewed obviously all different faiths. Obviously, Utah is very predominant with the Latter-day Saint faith, but there's been others, and 100% God is involved. People that aren't actively like going to a church or anything like that, and they have a belief in God, it just blows my mind how much he is involved in all of this. And it's like, holy cow. Like, to me, I'm like, you cannot not adopt and not believe in some kind of higher power, because just everything that comes with it, it's just amazing. And it's just, I just love it. It's so near and dear to my heart. So, thank you. Do you guys have anything else to add?
No, thank you so much for spending time with us, and we're so grateful. And if anybody out there knows somebody who's thinking of placing, hit us up.
Shameless shout out.
Yeah.
I will for sure tag you when I post this video. So I seriously appreciate it. And if you guys have any questions or comments or anything for these guys, please comment or reach out to her. She's awesome. She's an open book, super nice. And I reached out to her to do this for me. And I just love it. And Brayden, thank you for joining. I seriously love getting a male perspective because there's not very many. I've only interviewed one male adoptee, and I'm trying to like get more. I went to high school with him, so I was able to nab him, but
I love it.
Yeah. Okay. Well, seriously, you guys have a good night. Thank you. And I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. We appreciate you.